Hi everyone, welcome tuning into this special workshop video for lectures containing week 4 and 5, time value of money and interest rate. This is a remake of a video in 2020. There was the same version in 2019, but it was a background music to it. I've got a few emails from students asking for recordings without background music, so I'm remaking this video. But there is a 2019 version if you prefer. All right, let's cut straight to the questions. So we have 6 questions in chapter 4 and 2 questions from chapter 5. Most of these questions should be very straightforward, and I strongly encourage to have a go before you read the answers. And we're gonna go through the question together, all right? So question 1, chapter 4, problem 14. You figure that the total cost of university will be 100,000 per year, 18 years from today. If your discount rate is 8% compounded annually, what is the present value today of 3 years of university course starting 18 years from today? So for those of you who have completed MFL test 4, you know that this question is very similar to one of the questions. All right, let's just do it together. You always start with drawing a timeline to indicate, the cash flow that you're going to be receiving. So today, 0, 1 year, and up to year 17, year 18, year 19, and year 20, right? Not a perfect timeline. And let's have a look. So you have to pay $100,000 per year in 18 years from today. So which means the first cash flow is gonna be in year 18. So 100K, 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 right? And that's today. And you want to find out what's the present value today, right? There are 2 ways to go about it. First of all, is that you can simply just calculate the present value as sum them up, the discounted cash flow. 100K, not 100, 100K just short notation, divided by 1 plus 0.08 power to how many years? 18 plus 100K divided by 1.08 power to 19, because that's 19 years from today, plus the last cash flow in year 20, 1.08, 20, right? So that's doable, and you will get the same answer as what we're gonna do later on. That is 69,650.93. Alternatively, as a second approach and as a preferred approach, given that they are equal amount, we should use a shortcut. And the shortcut is, so here, alternatively, what we should do is that we should identify this is an annuity. I mean, it's not exactly a perfect annuity. It's called deferred annuity. But I guess we don't need to memorize the term deferred annuity if we know that this isn't an annuity. Why it isn't an annuity? Because the first cash flow happens in year 18. Not today, not in 1 year's time, not in 2 years' time, but in 18 years' time. So which means that's where you are now, right? With lots of hair. But let's say if you time travel to year 17, right? Time travel to year 17, that's where you are. With a bit less hair, because you probably lost some hair because of some other reason, right? And so now, from year 17's point of view, the first cash flow will be at the end of the first year, right? And the second cash flow will be at the end of year 2, and the third cash flow will be at the end of year 3. Because now, coming from year 17's point of view, let me just highlight that. If you're just looking at that itself is an annuity. So let's say here we have an annuity, and we write that as, using blue, present value year 17, that gives you 100K times 1 over 0.08 times 1 minus 1.08, because 1 plus r, power to what? Power to 3 here, because there are three cash flows. And that will give you 257,709.70. But remember, this formula here would only give you present value in year 17, because you time traveled. But you don't care about year 17, you care about year 0. So in order to go back to present value of year 0, you discount that number to today, which is that number over here divided by 1.08 power to 17. And you have to be very careful about why that is 17, all right? Of course, you will end up with the same number over here. But why 17? 17 is because we time traveled 17 years time, such that we're then having the right condition for using the present value of annuity formula, because the first cash flow has to be at the end of year 1, right? So if you are here, if you are here, that will be at the end of year 1, all right? That's the first question. So it's a very important concept that you have to be able to know how to go through and using different ways to make it look like an annuity, all right? So that's the first example. Move on to the next question. All right, this is chapter 4, problem 15, question 2. So assume that your superannuation fund promised you $40,000 per year starting when you retire 45 years from today. The first 40K will come 45 years from now. If your discount rate is 7% compounding annually and you plan to leave for 15 years after retiring, that's very generous to the government, right? You actually decide to leave only for 15 years. So that you will get a total of 16 payments, including the first one. What is the value today of the superannuation fund's promise? So this question is very similar to the previous one, very similar. Again, it's called deferred annuity, and I don't want you to know that it's deferred annuity. You don't have to know, as long as you know it's very similar to an annuity, but it isn't, right? And let's just do all the key point over here. All right, so you decide to retire 45 years from today. So which means this is when you retire, right? And then after that, you're gonna receive and so from the time you retire, you can get a super payment, and that will be 40K. So which means you will get 40K from here, and 40K from here all the way into here. And what does that mean? Well, that means, first of all, the question already tells you how many payments there are. There are 16 payments. This is very important. All right, 16 payments. So, all right, how do we go about it? The present value equals to, again, if you can use the long way, that's perfectly fine. We can discount them, we can sum them up, discount all the individual cash flows. That would be $40,000 divided by what's the interest rate? 1.07 power to 45 plus 40K divided by 1.07 power to 46, so on, into 40K, 1.07, 60. It's pretty massive because there are about 16 of them, right? 16 terms. And the answer will be the same as what we're gonna get using an alternative way. The answer is, I'm gonna write it over here, is $19,250.92. So that it isn't that much. Jeez, right? That's actually looks smaller than each payment. And so what is the alternative? What is the alternative way? The alternative way is how to turn this into an annuity. We know that it isn't an annuity because the first cash flow doesn't happen at the end of the first year. Well, now we're here now. So we're here now. How do we actually make it look like an annuity? The best way to time travel to 44, right? Time travel to 44. And so such that your first cash flow at the age of 40 or 45 years. So the first cash flow will be at the end of the first year. Second cash flow will be the end of second year, and so on and so on. So which means this present value, we say 44 here, that becomes an annuity times 0.07 times 1 minus 1 over 1.07. And what is the number here? Very important. That number is going to be 16, right? Why 16? Because there are 16 payments, right? That's very important. And that will give you $377,865.94. right? But do we care about the present value in 44 years time? No, we don't. So we need to further discount that back, that number, by 1.07 power to 44. And again, it's very important for you to know why that is 44, not 43, not 45. 44 is because we need the time travel to 44 years such that the first cash flow in 45 years time become 1 year from 44, right? And that will give you the same answer. And I'm not gonna write it. All right, so those two questions tells you, illustrate how you can make a stream of cash flow that looks like an annuity, but not to make it, make it like an annuity. And the next question, chapter 4, problem 24. You have an investment account that started with $1,000 10 years ago, and which now has grown to 5,000. What annual rate of return have you earned? If the savings bond earns 15% per year from now on, what will the account's value be 10 years from now? All right, let's answer question 8 first. What annual rate of return have you earned? So here, you made a single investment because you have an investment account that you only make one single input, which is 1,000. So which means your $1,000 times the interest rate that you have for 10 years now grown to 5,000. All right. So that means what? That means in order to solve for R, you just simply rearrange it. So let me just do it step by step, just in case if some people are less comfortable with the math. 5,000 divided by 1,000, which is 5. And then we take 1 plus R equals to 5 power to 1 over 10, right? Move the 10 to the other side. And R equals to 5, 1 over 10 minus 1. And that should be 17.46%, right? You should be comfortable doing that. If not, definitely put a question on the discussion forum. So for part B, if the savings bond, so we haven't actually introduced bond just yet. We'll talk about that in week 6. If the savings bond earns 15% per year from now on, what will the account value be 10 years from now, right? So that means now the interest rate changed to 15%. What is the value 10 years from now? So that's future value. Future value equals to what we have today, which is 5,000 times the new interest rate is 0.15 power to 10, and that would give you 227.79 dollars. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. All right, let's move on. So chapter 4, problem 28 is our question 4. You are thinking about buying a piece of art that costs $50,000. The art dealer is proposing the following deal. He will lend you the money and you will repay the loan by making the same payment every 2 years for the next 20 years. So here there's a bracket to show you that's it's a total of 10 payments. If the interest rate is 4% per year, how much will you have to pay every 2 years? So here, again, it is an annuity. I'll show you why, just a second. So let's just say here, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and all the way up to 19 and 20, right? You will make a repayment in year 2, because the first payment is in 2 years' time, every 2 years. So that's the first payment, second payment, third payment, and all the way to year 20, right? And you don't make any payment year 1, 3, 5, 7, so on, right? So before we are done lecture 5, this would look pretty difficult because it isn't an annuity because we are given an yearly interest rate. But we know this has to be an annuity, right? Because it just follows the pattern. It's same cash flow, happen on a regular interval. So let's have a look. So what's the interval here? We're making a payment every 2 years. So which means if we rename our timeline to be 0, 1, 2, 3 and all the way to 10, where each one becomes a 2-year. So now that is an annuity because my first payment will be the end of my first period, well, my period being 2 years, right? And the second one will be in 2 years time, that being 4 years time. So now that is an annuity. And so what do we do? We're gonna find the interest rate first, right? So the interest rate, a 2-year interest rate. So the 2-year interest rate is that, well, 1 plus 2-year interest rate power to 1 equals to 1 plus 1-year interest rate, 1 interest rate power to 2, right? Because that's 2 periods compounding for 1 year. And I mean, now that should be very straightforward for you after learning the week 5 material. So that means my R2 year equals to 1.04. That is 1 plus 1-year interest rate power to 2 minus 1, right? That is 0.0816. And what's next? Well, your loan payment is 50,000, so which means that 50,000 is your present value, right? Someone gonna lend you that amount. So 50,000 gonna be equaling to your repayment times 1 plus 1 over 0.0816 times 1 minus 1.0816, 1 here. And how many payments here we have? Let me just using different color. That is 10 payments, right? Very important. That's a total of 10 payments. And then you're just gonna solve for C. And some people say, what do you mean solve for C? Well, just rearrange it, right? Rearrange it, you get 50,000 divided by 1 over 0.016 times 1 minus 1.0816 power to 10. Just put that in your calculator to calculate each individual part. And you will get the answer as $7,505.34. And the payment is every 2 years, right? So that is workshop number 4. Question number 4. Next question, chapter 4, problem 30. And this question is slightly harder than the previous one, right? And let me elaborate why. So you are saving for retirement to live comfortably. You decide you will need to save $2 million by the time you are 65. Today is your 22nd birthday, and you decide starting today and continuing. And I'm gonna highlight it. Starting today. And continuing on every birthday up to and including your 65th birthday that you put the same amount into a savings account. Same amount. If the interest rate is 5%, how much must you set aside each year to make sure that you will have $2 million in the account on your 65th birthday? Like always, we do a timeline. All right, so here, how many payments are there? Right, let's just say, if you're not sure how many payments, let's just say here we are age 22, right? That's today. And next year we're turning 23. Next year we're turning 24, all the way up to 65. 64 and 65. So if you're not sure, let's just say, some people say, I don't like using 622 as a way it is. So let's just say we treat that as year 0, right? If you think that's year 0, that will be year 2, 1, that will be in year 2. And that will be what? 22. If you minus 22 on both sides, that will becomes 42, and that is 43. And that's how you draw a timeline, right? If you're not comfortable with doing it, we're just saying, okay, 65 and 22, that would be 43 years doing this way, right? So which means if you look focusing on the orange writing over there, that becomes a conventional timeline. And that's something I would encourage you to do. And now let's plot the cash flows there, right? So you're gonna make a savings today. So which means when you turn 22, like today, times 0. So that's a payment there, a payment there, payment there, and all the way, including when you turn 65. So payment there and payment there. So how many payments are there in total? 44 payments, right? 44 payments. Why? Because we have 43 here and plus payment today, 44 payments. And so the question now becomes, I know this is an annuity, but it is an annuity. Well, first of all, sorry, not first of all again. So here we want to save $2 million by the time 65. So we have another piece of information, that is, we want $2 million here. That's what we want. You can either looking at a future value or you can look at a present value. My personal preference is looking at a present value. We're always looking at from today times 0. So that means the present value of what we want to be will be $2 million divided by 1.05 power to what? Power to 43, because that's in 43 years time. Don't get confused with 44 payment, because $2 million will be 43 years from today. And that will give you 245,480.80. And then the rest is just to say, okay, my second present value, I'm going to use using black color. It's going to be present value of C plus C divided by 1.05 plus C divided by 1.05 square plus all the way to C over 1.05 43, right? That's essentially what's happening. But of course, there are so many terms for you to sum up, and you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to do that. So what's the best way? Best way is to recognize that this is partly an annuity. So what do you mean by partly annuity? So let's just say, if you look at this question, if I'm using like say blue, if I'm using blue to cover that C, so if you just, sorry, let me just do that again. So if we focusing on this C's over here, so the one I highlighted by blue, so this highlighted part is an annuity. Why? Because the first cash flow happens in 1 year's time, the second cash flow happens in 2 years' time. So that becomes an annuity. So that becomes an annuity that we can find out what that present value of annuity is. And that equals to C times 1 over 1.05, 1 minus 1.05. What's the number here? 43, right? Why 43? Because if you're only focusing on the blue highlighted part, there are only 43 of them, which means that one isn't included, right? So that looks like just a traditional annuity. There are 43 of them. That is why that one is 43. But of course, we don't just have 43 payments. We have 44 payments. So on top of that, we need to add this one. Let's just using green. We need to add that one, right? And that one, the present value, equals to just C, right? So you can see that the present value of this whole term becomes this plus this, right? So if I write it, that just becomes C plus C times 1.05, 1.05 power to 43, right? And the rest just to solve for C. So that means here we have an equation. We have this present value equaling this present value. So if you write them together, that becomes 245,408.80 equals to C plus C times 1.05 times 1 minus 1.05 power to 43. And solve for C. So C becomes 245,408.80 divided by 1 plus 1.05 times 1 minus 1.05 power to 43, right? 43. And you can just solve it. And I'm going to log on to my computer to see what I did. And that equals to $13,232.50. All right. Question 6. You graduate and get a $10,000 check from your grandparents. You decide to save it towards a deposit on the house. You invest it, earning 10% per year, and you think you will need to have $20,000 saved for this deposit. How long will you be before the $10,000 has grown to $20,000? So here, this question is saying, I have 10,000, and I multiply by my interest rate, which is 0.10, parallel to, I don't know what that number is, and my goal is I will have 20,000, right? So that question becomes just solve for n. So, all right, for those of you who are not too comfortable with the math, so I'll just do it. So that 1.1 power to n equals to 20,000 divided by 10,000, which is become 2. N equals to ln 2 and ln 1.1. And that equals to 7.27. And if you're not sure why that's the case, just in case, you take ln, natural log, on both hand side. And having ln over there, the power can go to the front now. So that becomes n times ln 1.1 equals to ln 2. And that becomes that. All right. Our second last question, our next two questions is from chapter 5. All right, chapter 5. You're considering two ways of financing an Easter holiday. I guess this holiday this year is gonna be canceled, right? You could put it on your credit card at 15% APR, compounded monthly, or borrow the money from your parents who want an 8% interest payment every 6 months. Which is the lower rate? So which one is the lower rate? So here we have two interest rates, and let me just write it. Interest rate 1 is 15% per year, APR means per annum, compounded monthly. So that means our monthly interest rate, by definition, equals to 15% divided by 12, because that's just the definition of the APR, right? These two doesn't match. That's an APR, right? And it will already tell you is the APR. So that means our monthly interest rate equals to the APR divided by number of periods per year, and that's 15%. 0.125. And we're gonna compare that interest rate with the interest rate offered by our parents. And what our parents do is that they were charging 8% interest per 6 months. All right, 8% per month per 6 months. So 8% per 6 months, and this tells you what? This is a periodic rate, right? Periodic rate. And how do we compare them? Well, one of them is monthly, and this is a periodic rate too, but that's monthly, and this is a periodic rate, but that's 6 months. So R1, our monthly 0.0125, and you can turn them into the same interval. So the easiest way is to convert to EAR, such that because EAR means both of them have a frequency of 1 year. So all right, so let's just say for interest rate 1, what's the EAR? So the EAR 1 plus 1 power to 1 should be the same as our monthly rate power to 12. And that equals to 1.10125 power to 12. And so our EAR1 equals to 1.0125 power to 12 minus 1. And that is 16.08%. Right, that's the first one. Let me just using different color for the second one. For our second one, is 6 months interest rate, right? So that means our EAR2 power to 1 equals to our 6 months interest rate power to 2. Why power to 2? Because there are 2 6 months every year. So which means that becomes 1.08 power to 12. Sorry, not 12. Power to 2. Power to 2. So our EAR2 equals to 1.08 square minus 1, and that equals to 16.64%. And now we have to say which one is the lowest rate. So it looks like the lowest rate is the smaller of the two, which is this. And that means the credit card that that you are offered has a lower rate. So if your parents involved in finance industry, you gotta be careful, right? You gotta be careful about what kind of interest rate product they're gonna offer to you, right? Just as an extension, some people may say here is that, well, one of them is 1 month, one of them is 6 months. Could you just turn 1 month into 6 months? Yes, you can do that as well. So as an alternatively, if we know that there was 6 1 month period every 6 months, sounds redundant, but there was 6 1 month period in every 6 months, you can turn this number into a 6 month rate. So that means 1 plus R 6 months power to 1 equals to 1 plus R 1 month power to 6. That becomes 1.0125 power to 6. So which means for interest rate R1, the 6 months rate equals to 1.0125 power to 6 minus 1. And that equals to, because I just come up with that one, let's have a look at what Excel tells me. Equals to 1.0125 power to 6 minus 1. And that gives you 0.07783, which is 7.74% roughly. And the conclusion should still hold, because 7.74% comparing to for your interest rate, second interest rate, R 6 months equals to 8%. Which one's lower? This one's lower. So your conclusion should be the same, right? Doesn't matter which frequency that you want. You can compare them on 6 months basis. You can compare them on yearly basis. The convention is people compare on a yearly basis, such that you can compare across many different interest rates rather than just 2 of them. But I guess for this particular question, you can do it on 6 months basis if you want. As you can see, it makes no difference, right? The conclusion is the same. All right, the last question. You have decided to refinance your mortgage. You plan to borrow whatever is outstanding on your current mortgage. The current monthly payment is $2,356, and you have made every payment on time. Good on you. The original term of the mortgage was 30 years, and the mortgage is exactly 4 years and 8 months old. You have just made your monthly payment. That's a very important information. You have just made it. So which means, let me just highlight that. You have just made your monthly payment. That sentence just means your next payment is exactly 1 period away. And what is your period here? That will be monthly. So which means your next payment will be next month. Sometimes you will tell you that you haven't made your monthly payment yet. You're about to make your monthly payment. So but in this question, you have just made, which means your next one will be exactly 1 month away. The mortgage interest rate is 5.375% per annum APR. It doesn't really specify the frequency here, compounding frequency. So by default, that will be the same as your cash flow frequency. So that means you are having 5.375% per annum compounded monthly. How much do you owe on a mortgage today? So over here, let's draw a timeline like always. So I guess the question here is saying there are 30 years of payment, right? 30 years of payment. So which means the last payment will be $360. And you have just made your monthly payment and exactly 4 years and 8 months, right? 4 years and 8 months, that means what? That means 4 times 12 plus 8, that means 56, all right? That means 56. And you just made your payment, which means your next payment is 57th payment, and 58, and so on, right? And so that gives you an idea about how to change it to the conventional one. So which means conventional timeline requires us to say, okay, that's time 0, right? Time 1, time 2. And so now we go from time 0 minus 56, so which means 3660 minus 56, that becomes 304, right? 304, and now let's overlay our cash payment. So we're gonna make a payment here, we're gonna make a payment here. Not today, because we already just made it, right? Just made it. So C, and all the way to C here. And how many C's over here? How many payments? 304 payments. That's very important, right? If you're not sure how to get 304 payments, always start what I do over here. You know, do a timeline here saying 360, because that is your last payment, and we have just made our 4 years and 8 months. Is 4 years and 8 months old. That is 56 months. So we have just made our 56 months payment, right? The next payment is 57, 58. So from that black one, the black timeline, you can then go on to the orange timeline, such that that's how you make it. That's how you can get to know what how many payments there will be. All right. So our interest rate is, our monthly interest rate is equals to 5.375% divided by 12, because that's just a convention, equals to 0.447917%, right? And how much do you owe on the mortgage today? That just means what is the present value of your remaining payments, and that becomes present value of C dollars times 1 over R times 1 minus 1 plus R over N, and that equals to your monthly payment is 2356 times 1 over interest rate R is that one. I'm gonna highlight it. All right, I'm just gonna write R here. 1 minus 1 plus R power to 304. I'm gonna highlight this. R goes over here and goes over there, right? And this question is very straightforward. You just need to put in your calculator. So 390,803.92, right? And that's it. So I guess the only tricky bit for this question is to work out the timeline and to work out how many payments left, right? And once you do that and you nail the interest rate, which is just a conventional APR, then the rest just plug into the formulas. All right, and that's it for our workshop today. And talk to you on Monday on the lecture recording.